Welcome to Six Figure Souls Doing Good and Making Money, the weekly podcast where I highlight entrepreneurs who have left the grind and designed businesses in alignment with who they are. This is a very special season 9 where I'm interviewing my co-authors of our third collaborative book in the Ultimate Guide series, Leaving Your Legacy. I'm your host, Camille Miller, international business strategist, life accelerator, and founder of the Natural Life Business Partnership. In the studio today, I have with me Virginia Rich. She is the Dean, School of Business and Computer Science for Caldwell University. Thank you, Virginia, for being with us.
Thank you, Camille. It's good to see you.
You as well. And I also wrote about Caldwell University. Well, I didn't name the university, but I wrote about my teaching experience in my chapter. So I don't know if you've had the chance to read this, but I wrote about a certain dean that gave me inspiration to be a teacher, and it is you. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you. Speaking of reading about you, I have been reading of what your students have said about you, and here's some of the phrases that have popped up. A natural born teacher. So
Oh,
that came up more than once.
thank
And
you.
I know from having observed you that you are an inspiration to your students, just the way you inspire all of us to stretch beyond our comfort zone and do some fun new things. So
Oh, thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank you so much. Well, I loved having you as a co-author, and thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. First, I want to talk about a little bit. Usually, I go into your background of, what you do in the world, but I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about your teaching experience because I think it's really interesting that you didn't start life off as a teacher.
No, I
And
absolutely did not. But then again, I kind of did because when I look back, some of the most fun moments I had as an undergraduate and then as a law school student were with the working collaboratively with other students to help each other to understand things. And one of the things that I've learned over through that process and many other processes since then is that it's hard sometimes to learn certain things. And certain
yeah.
things are easier for some people than others, but sometimes it's just hard. I know how hard it can be to learn certain things. And that has been sort of a driving force behind a lot of my decisions in life to do what I have done. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and I am definitely, as you and I have talked about, I'm pretty much a living, breathing example of change in your life. My background was a science major, and then I became an attorney. And so that was a pivot right there. So, but it made environmental law really fun and interesting for me. Um, and and then after becoming a partner in a law firm, after a number of years of hard work, I knew something was still missing, that it's something else I still wanted to do, and that thing that I wanted to do was teach a class. And here I am now, having taught more than one class. Um, Taught a class, got a master's in teaching, and became a professor here at Caldwell, which gave me so many wonderful opportunities more than 2 decades ago. I still can't believe that. And then working in different areas, that these are all areas of growth and stretching, as you and I have talked about, as you never quite know where your future is going to take you. And I certainly could never have envisioned where I would have become. This was never my goal, but this is where I am.
Yeah. But isn't that kind of the beauty of it? Like when I look back, even my degrees, they're all over the place, right? They're like nothing makes sense until I sit in this space today and go, there was no other way I could be who I was today. There's no other way that I could help
Yeah.
people design these alternative business approaches if I didn't do it, right? If I didn't have this very eclectic background in strategy. Like it's
And
so
everything takes you on the road. I tell this to my students. Everything takes you on the road to where you're going, and you just
yeah,
don't know, you just don't know where that road is.
yeah.
So I, I love being open to opportunities, new adventures, whatever it might be. I love being open to that. And when I first started, I started as an adjunct professor, as you did. And then an opportunity came up for a 1-year interim hire, which I took. And then after that, and this is, I decided, you know what, if I'm going, and I'm sure everybody has had this experience, you've had some teachers who are just awesome. And then you've had a few teachers who maybe could have used a course on teaching, maybe two. And I didn't want to be in that group. So I wanted to be, so I said, you know, I'm going to get I talked to my number one proponent, support, cheerleader is my husband. And I said, you know, I'm thinking about switching to teaching. And he said, I think you'd be awesome at it. You should do it. And I decided, well, if I'm going to do it, I kind of want to do it. So I wanted to get, even though since I already had a doctoral degree, I didn't need any more teaching to teach at the college level. I decided to get a master's in teaching. And it was just like, wow, this is the best. I learned so much in the Master's of Arts and Teaching program. And everything that I ever knew about how I learn, how other people learn, it just sort of fell into place. And I said, you know what, this is kind of this is what I want to bring to this new career. And that's what I did.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun.
I look back and realize that I've always been a teacher, right? I just do it differently. But like I could go back to even before my kids' times. I used to work with what they called like business improvement districts and go and teach entrepreneurs and business owners like how to set up their businesses, how to do their finances, like always. And when I moved last year, I found all of these classes I had written. And it was my aha, because I wrote in my chapter what happened over this last year since I decided to move. And I went, oh my God, I used to be a teacher. What happened to me? Right? Because I had stopped. And that's what brought it all back. But I think I know when you teach, for all of us, and there's a lot of teachers in the world that don't know that they're teachers. Like it's more, you're a teacher not only in the school system, but there are coaches and teachers and people helping in churches and nonprofits and people all over the world, mentors, right? That are actually really inspiring and helping people along the way. They're making their impact.
Right.
And this book, I think, is really about how are we making our impact in the world?
And one of the things I found that has been so interesting about all of the stories in this book is how everybody has come to this in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And for the most part, unintentionally. And that was something I wrote about in my chapter, that I said, when I have been my best self, when I have just said, oh, that's interesting, I want to go try that. And without thinking about the consequences, without thinking, am I going to be good at it? Without thinking about where might this take me, I've been my best self. You just jump in and you do it. And I was amazed at how many people in the other authors, reading their stories saying, wow, this is really something, because so many of us have just sort of found our way into where we are.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's trusting the process, but really listening to yourself and not what everyone else would say about it. Because I'm sure when you left a practice, there were a lot of probably family members and friends that went, are you crazy? What are you doing? You've worked your whole life for this, right?
100%.
And just like they can look at you now and go, oh, she kind of knew what she was doing, right?
It worked.
Still successful, just in another way, in another field. Nothing wrong, right?
It was, and then an opportunity pops up and someone says, hey, would you consider working on this project? And you go, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I'll do that.
Yep.
And one of the most fun, I think you and I have talked about this, one of the reasons I love working with my faculty as they're coming on, as they're teaching and as they're coming on board, or like you thinking about giving it a try as an adjunct instructor. One of the most fun roles I've ever played has been chair of the faculty development committee, because I got to work with so many people all across the campus and in all different specialties.
Yeah.
And about what they do, and the common denominator for all the good teachers and researchers is that passion for what it is that they just know. If people could understand this concept, the world would definitely be a better place. And it's like, wow, that's just so great. And the ability to be there for them and to say, okay, here's a resource we could maybe tap that would help you. That's the most fun of what it is that I do.
Yeah.
With students, with colleagues, with now as the head of a school, that's the most fun.
Yeah. I want to tap into what made you decide to be a part of this book.
Ooh. Well, you're a very persuasive person.
Okay.
but you really are. You have your commitment to this process, your commitment to what you've done with your other books was really palpable. And it was something that your term about leaving your legacy, one of the things, as definitely I've always been a bit of a nerd. I love to learn, but I am curious about the world. One of the things I've been, I'm not going to say fearful of, but cognizant of, is the world has been changing and it will always change. But some of the changes, some of the trends that I was seeing were in the past decade have been more negative, some of them more negative than positive, some of them more positive than negative. But I was thinking, if people knew that the actions that they take will have this ripple effect, how would they make those decisions? Is that the direction that they would choose to go? And this is actually something that I've spoken to my faculty about, when it's very humbling when students come back, sometimes years later, and they say, oh, Professor Rich, do you remember that conversation that we had about whatever something might be? And then you remember what you said to me? And I'm like, oh, no. What did I say? And then they'll tell me, and I'll say, that definitely sounds like something I would say. And they said, I've never forgotten it, and it's helped me in various times in my life. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we don't know the impact we have on people.
Right.
We need to try to make sure it's a positive one. And then that kind of has gotten me thinking about the effects. What is it that we leave behind? And I've often thought, especially when we look at some of the social issues that have caused such divisiveness, political issues that have caused such divisiveness. My concern always about the environment. What is the legacy that we're leaving? What is that? We need to be more mindful of that. We need to think about that as we're making our decisions going forward. And this has been kind of kicking around in my head, even a website, but I'm like, when do I have time to develop a website? But what is your legacy was my, what is it that you're leaving behind? And I don't mean the monetary possessions that will pass along, but what is the impact that you leave behind? So I'm having these thoughts in my head, and then all of a sudden you popped into my life as an adjunct and said, hey, I've got this book about leaving your legacy. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. So let's see where this goes. And then we started talking about it. And I said, you know what, this would be a fun first step for me to be thinking about ways to share some thoughts that may or may not be helpful to people. I hope that they are, but to think about things and to maybe spark an idea in somebody's head about where they might go or what they might do with their own life. So long answer, I'm sorry, but
No, that's great.
that was the thought process as you were talking about what you have been able to do and the direction that you have gone, and you're bringing all of your talents and your abilities and skills together, and now it's like going right where you want it to be. And great.
Thank you.
I love that.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about your chapter, as I know you started with really a student story. It was brilliantly done but it was really about change. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your chapter?
Sure. One of the this my university now is we are a small liberal arts faith-based institution, and I would say that our students are, generally speaking, they're not privileged. One of the issues that we hear so much criticism now about the role of higher education, is it necessary, and all the rest of it. I will tell you, with many first generation college attendees, they truly need higher education, and they benefit so much by it. And I am so proud of the fact that we actually are creating socioeconomic mobility for people. So we have students who are first generation college attendees who truly are elevating themselves and their families and their lives through education and the opportunities that come from education and some expertise in a particular area. The doors of opportunity that open for them these opportunities are not wasted on our students, and I'm very proud of that. But there's a phenomenon that I've learned quite a bit about, and it's been getting a lot of really good coverage lately, and it's about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That if you feel that I don't know if I'm really up for this challenge, or I don't know if I really belong there, then the minute there's a setback, a student will say, I don't think I should be in college. I just think it's just not for me. I've always been, whatever. And we need to say, hang in there. This is not the only challenge you're going to face in your life. So one of the things that I try to tell my students, I encourage them to do, is find an opportunity for some intentional perspective on your own life. And one of the best bits of advice I ever got was from a former colleague in a law firm who said the half step back for perspective is what every attorney should bring to every client. Just need to back away and just look at it as objectively as you can. And I thought, you know what, we could use that in our lives. And I started doing that. And once a year, sitting down, started doing it with my husband those first few years, and intentionally reflecting with some very simple and straightforward questions to think about the past year and look ahead to where you might want to be. And that was kind of what I am talked about with my in my chapter, but
yeah,
with my students, that opening anecdote in my chapter was, my goodness, everybody has a different path. And she told me about she couldn't believe it, but she got an internship for her dream job. And her dream job was so far removed from what my dream job would be. She was so excited. And I was like, oh, this is the best. This is why we do what we do, because we're helping students to find their way to where they should be. And it occurs to me that we each are responsible for our own journey. So we each need to be thinking about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and kind of how we can be our best self. And anything that we can do to help ourselves and each other along that path, I'm all in. So
I love it. I love it. I felt like your chapter also encouraged people to explore what they might not feel was for them, but it might be, because it was more of like a societal thing. Like, you don't believe that you can do it, but who told you that? That's like a limiting belief. Like,
absolutely.
you can be. anything.
Absolutely.
So it was like a catalyst of change, of bringing yourself to whatever this next level might look like for someone.
And you know, I have to admit, I've followed my own advice,
Which was
and
going to be my next question.
I have, and I've had an opportunity popped up for me after a long time of working with absolutely wonderful colleagues here who I treasure and will be part of my life for always. An opportunity popped up for me at another institution, and I'm taking it. So it's going to be next month. I'll be moving into a new role. I'll be the dean of the School of Business, Mathematics, Engineering, and Technology at the County College of Morris. So this is a huge program. It's an exciting program. They have a tremendous workforce development program that I believe so passionately in. The idea of using current knowledge, current advances in knowledge to enhance your own path, your own journey, your own career. This is what we should be doing, and helping people to either start that journey or to finish or to develop in a whole new area. So I'm super excited about it, and it's going to be a big challenge. There's going to be areas of expertise that I don't have, but I know for sure I will be surrounded by people with that expertise.
Yeah.
I will be able to rely on those folks and say, yep, here's where we're going next, and help me out in how we're going to get there. So looking forward to it.
I love it. Congratulations on that. I know that's a big move. It's a
Big
big
move.
move. Yeah. And what I'm here also heard you say when you talked about Caldwell is how you love to be a part of the journey. Sometimes for first time college educated people and families.
Yes,
And I think going to a county college, that's even going to amplify.
it will.
Right? It's a lot of people even testing, am I ready for college? Is this where I'm supposed to go? So I feel like your impact is just amplifying by taking this role, which is so beautiful.
I'm really excited about that. That's one of the things that I'm most jazzed up about. We all know so many people who they're going to be fine no matter what, and
Yeah.
they're going to be fine. They have supportive families. They have life circumstances that will make sure that they'll be just fine. Lots of people out there are not in that role.
Yeah.
And they need some encouragement. They need training. They need knowledge, skills, and abilities, that competencies that can be developed, certainly can be developed. You and I have talked about organizational leadership.
Yeah.
And these are skills. It's like, well, you know, great leaders, are they born or are they made? Great strategic thinkers, are they born or are they made? A little bit of both. And some people naturally gravitate to certain issues, but these all are skills that can be developed. And even if people don't feel that they have them, and I certainly see that in areas such as, you know, communications, where people are like, oh no, I can't possibly do public speaking. You do it all the time, you just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So helping people in that area is something that's important to me.
Yeah. I love that. I always say one of my jobs is to find other people's unique abilities, because people don't see them within themselves.
Right.
And when you just say, oh my gosh, like this is your unique ability, this is your greatness.
Right.
And people are always like, really? I don't see that.
I'm right there with you. And it's one of those things where one of my colleagues uses the Johari window as a great teaching tool. And what do you know about yourself? And it's a matrix. So what do you know about yourself that everybody else knows? That's your public self. And then it goes down to, what do you know about yourself that other people don't know? That's your private self. Then there's that area that you're talking about right there, that other area of the matrix, that what do you don't know about yourself that other people see? And it's like, that's where you have some extraordinary opportunity for growth. Yeah. So it's a fun concept. I think the more people help each other to develop in that area, I think it just enhances everybody's, it enhances relationships, it enhances everything. It makes, it's not only why we do what we do, but it's really, for many reasons, I think it's what makes life worth living.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I always say, when you're working in that unique genius, you have no competition, right? You're either it or you're not it. Like I always say that people want to work with me or they don't. Like you're a hell yes or you're a no, because you know, right? There's not two of me, right? There's not two of you. Like when you're so fit for something, but when you know whatever that uniqueness is about you, that's the hard part, right? That's the hard part for people stepping into their uniqueness.
Well, I also think for a lot of really good reasons, change is scary and hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And walking to a different drum beat.
Yeah.
Right. That's, there's societal norms that we've grown up with of this is the way it's done.
Right.
This is how it's done. And we're always like, okay, but where did that come from? Can we challenge that? Right. And people don't like to challenge things, but I feel like there is a paradigm shift happening.
I think that people are more ready for the question of, now tell me why you would do that, which is such a great question.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're just doing and we're going and it's like, wait a minute, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've told my kids, as I'm sure you've told a billion students along your way, like you're so young when you enter school, right? And you're forced at a very young age to pick a major of what you think you should be because maybe you're good at it in school or something. But as you grow and mature and learn all these other doors in the world that maybe your high school didn't even teach, right? That you
Absolutely.
figure yourself. I was like, I'm still figuring myself out, right? And every decade gets better, but I've changed.
Right. I say this to students, you're right, a billion students.
Yeah.
I said it to every student I can think of. You come in at 18, you're picking your major. And there's this incredible amount of stress. I don't know what I want to be. It's okay. You don't have to know. Just, I say it to my people all the time. Do the best you can in the time you got with the resources at your disposal, with the best of intentions. Everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
That will be it. You'll be fine.
Yeah. And I always told my kids, I was like, explore outside of what you think you want to learn. Because that's actually how I ended up going into business and getting my MBA. I was a psychology major. And in my junior year, I had to fill out some core, something I had to do. And there was like a marketing class. And I took it and I loved it. And I was just like, oh my God, marketing is psychology. I do like psychology, but I think I need to see a different side of it because I didn't like counseling, but I already had my degree done. Right. So I'm like, what do I do now?
This is when students come to me and they go, it's too late. My life has already been decided. I'm
yes.
Like, no, it's okay.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, you can always change. Yeah. And I ended up taking a minor in business because it's the only thing I could fit in I had a year and a half. So what is that? 1, 2, 3 semesters left. And I was like, I can get a minor. Let me just figure this out. Right. And like most people take their senior year cruising. I was just, it was just like, I have to learn this, but I ended up I didn't go into a career in marketing, but I do think it changed because I keep finding, and then I was volunteering my time, at a nonprofit and someone said, they pay people to do this. Like you, and I was like, you can get paid to work in a nonprofit. I worked in nonprofits for decades and I ended up becoming a CEO of one because someone said, hey, like that wasn't in my brochure. No one ever said that, right? And it's still helping people in a different way. Absolutely. Right. So it's kind of these life things that happen. Like my oldest came out of college and she's like, Mom, I made a big mistake. It's like, you're 23. You didn't make any mistakes. Right. I was like, just go learn what you have to learn.
I know.
I was like, it's okay. Yeah.
It's the best is when they just say, okay, I think I have an idea of what I want to do. or students who say, you know what, my life is over. I did an internship and I hated it. I'm like, oh no, that's great news.
Yep.
You know what you don't want to do. And what's really funny, and I'm curious as to who told you to be a psychology or recommended that you be a psychology major. I always ask my students, okay, so tell me why you want this major. And invariably, well, not invariably, but frequently, somebody that they like, admire, respect will tell them, this is what you should be doing. And they say, okay, that sounds pretty good. And they listen to somebody that they care, which is great. But then it turns out,
Yeah.
That person might like it, but I don't know that I do. Or I thought I was going to have this great internship, and it was a great internship. It was a great learning opportunity. But as it turns out, I don't like this. Good to know. And put it in the good to know category. Let's move you in a different direction now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I started out with, I think I was a computer science major first. I forget. I feel like I had three before I ended up with psychology. I remember computer science and going to, biology, because I wanted to go to med school. That's what, so I did biology and the labs were so freaking early that I literally just went,
I'm not doing this.
I'm not. It was literally because lab was at 8 a.m.
Schedule. So a college scheduling decision made your decision.
Yeah, so that went out. Computer science, I went to like one of the math classes and I went, yeah, I'm not doing this. And psychology, I don't know how I chose it, and I do think that was a very good choice for me, but I was not good at counseling. I my mother was a double psychology and teaching. And I remember her always saying, everyone thought I was crazy to double major, but I always saw the psychology of how people behaved important in teaching. She goes, but they fought me on it. She's like, but I did it anyway. So I always thought the dynamics of my family, I'm one of 5 kids, and we were all so different. And that baffled me. I was like, how is that possible? So that's why I went into psychology. I was like, I'll figure it out. Right. And then I ended up working through college in counseling and absolutely hated it. Like hated it. I was just like, there is no way I'm doing this. But if you think about it, it is what I do in my life.
Oh, 100%.
Right. I think it was like the best thing to do, except
it's just different issues.
Right. I love the strategy. And then, in nonprofit, I did the exact same thing because I do strategy and I love to design. I'm very creative. So it's just kind of putting all of that together made me what I am. But
I know
it's still not in a catalog.
I do wonder this because, and I know the questions are supposed to be going the other way, but let me throw one at you. With that strategic mind you have, you decided to assemble a group of people for this particular book. And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah,
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so of course it's my 3rd time doing it, right? Yeah. So I always set out like this is the purpose of the book. So I'm like, I write that. I actually do it longhand. I have this little notebook here that I have had since I started. I write everything down, my thoughts before I write it. And I put it out. About 50% of the people I know. And then the other 50% I don't know, which has really become curious for me. But it's always worked out that way. And I find people on LinkedIn, I read profiles and stuff, and then I meet them. Of course, I had this podcast where I was meeting people all the time anyway, and being like, they'd be really good for this one. So the first book was just about creating a business. And there's lots of people that created businesses, but they weren't successful. But that wasn't what that book was about. It was just about following your dream. Right. The second book was actually about becoming successful. So now that you've created it, is it just a hobby? Or are you actually scaling and putting the design and business thing together? That book was a lot harder because there was a lot less people that were successful.
Right.
And I didn't want them talking about success. But then I realized when I was recruiting for that book that success is defined differently for different people. So I should not be defining it. And that opened up a lot more people and a lot more stories. Right. So I kind of learned in that one.
Yeah.
This third book I always knew was going to be Leaving Your Legacy. But how legacy defined was really hard for a lot of people. So once I defined it for people as the impact that you're leaving in the world, like, why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every day? Like, what is your purpose? And who are you impacting? And if you were to leave this earth today, how do you want to be remembered? Not by stuff, not by your bank account, but by the hearts that you've and the souls that you've touched. And then a lot of people, a number of people from my first two books came back, right? And then I knew new people like you. And then I always ask other authors, like, do you know someone who can talk on this subject? So, and it was really reading LinkedIn profiles. I cannot stress enough how important LinkedIn is. LinkedIn. I literally read about people in LinkedIn and then reach out to them and say, you might not be good for the book, but let's have a conversation. So I interview every single person before, and I have turned down people and just went, you're not, this book isn't for you, but maybe another book is, or maybe you could be on our lunch team, or yeah. So I do handpick everybody to be on the book.
Wow, what a process.
Yeah, but and that's why I'm not doing it anymore. But because it's a lot of work, an incredible amount of work. It's a lot easier just to write one myself, but the stories, I think, is what makes it, right? And having so many different perspectives.
That was what I enjoyed so much about the meetings with the different authors, that the Zoom meetings, that different people talk about what they would be writing about, how they got to where they were.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. And I believe that people are taught through other people's stories. And in these books, people can find themselves. There is a story that matches everyone out there. It might not be my story, right? But it could be someone else's story that changes their life. And that's why it was really important for me to do this series, that I had all of these other voices. That's of expertise. Yeah.
I will say that from one of the things that has struck me over the many years of teaching is that when students see different people being successful in different things in different ways, and they resonate with that, it's hugely inspirational. And what's always funny is the students will say, well, I thought, like, well, how could you not be inspired by that particular thing? And trying to help them to understand that you're inspired by that because it speaks to you. And that is something that is an important thing for you to understand, is that speaks to you. You're unique. You are, as you were saying earlier, a unique combination of things that, and this particular story speaks to you. That's as instructive as anything. And let that help you, guide you to where you want to go, especially if you're not 100% sure where you're going to be. And very rarely do I find someone who knows this is exactly what I want to be. And sometimes they're there, and so they graduate and they go on, and I see them 10 years later, and it's like killing it out there, and they're like, way to go, you always knew yourself. And it's like, that's good for them. They are by far the exception. Most people are finding their way.
Yeah. Or I feel like there's a lot of people that I work with. I work with a lot of people in transition, right? They've built their empire, they're highly successful, and they go in, well, this doesn't make my heart sing, right? So it's always like, okay, tell me all of your abilities. Tell me what you want to do in the world. Tell me your dreams. How do you spend your time? Who's surrounding you? And they're really good at what they do. They just want to do it differently or not under someone else's thumb, right? I work with a lot of doctors and scientists and even lawyers, CPAs, people that, engineers, people that have worked in large firms, love what they do, but this isn't how they saw themselves doing it.
Want to do it
Right.
differently.
So
Right.
so it's like, okay, well, have you ever thought of private practice? Well, no, no one ever said I could do that. I was always taught to work for a firm.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, okay. And that's where we start to have these other conversations
It's so fun.
of how else can we do it? What would that look like for you?
Yeah.
Who would you be working with? Yeah. Because they're always like, I didn't know I could do it that way. I can't tell you how many times they hear that. I didn't know I could do it that way.
So are there any questions that you frequently ask that help people to have that breakthrough? Is it if you, that one right there, that question right there, if you could, what would you do?
So mine is, because my father did this to me. Mine is, if you won the lottery today, what would tomorrow look like?
Ooh, great question.
Right? Because what would you get up and do? Would you go to work?
Yeah.
Would you help, because if you immediately say, I quit my job, I'm never going back, you're not in your lane of joy, clearly.
No.
Right? But you might like aspects of it, right? So if money didn't matter, what would you do all day? Right? So of course people would travel and do all of these things first, but then they'd be bored and they'd be like, okay, I would do this. Like my father was a doctor and he always said, I'd open up a free clinic in the cities, which by the way, he already did. But he was like, but I would make it free for like more people. Like I would do more of what I'm doing. So that's someone who lived in their lane of joy.
Exactly.
And he did the exact same thing. He knew at a very young age what he wanted to do, went right through school, did it, created the private practice. He always like, I will never work for another person. Didn't, opened up free clinics and all of these things his whole life. That's what he did.
Great.
Right. But even, he ended up doing very, very well in life, still gave back everything. Right. And it was, so I ask people that, what would your life look like? Tell me. And who would you surround yourself with? What would you hear them saying about you? Because in all of that is your dream. Right. And then I'm like, okay, now we have, and I always talk about non-negotiables. Right. What will you absolutely know that you'll never do again? Right. Because then when we're creating the business plan, I'm like, that's a non-negotiable. We're not putting that in there. Like you told me you hate that. Why would you put it in there? Well, it's supposed to be in there, right? No, we are designing your business.
That's great.
Right. And so that's a big one. And we also do
I'm gonna get myself a couple notes here because I might
go through uniqueness exercises so we can find their unique genius, because a lot of people don't know what that is. Yeah. So fun stuff. Yeah. But mostly what I do is just allowing people to be who they authentically are. Right. My mission, my personal mission is to help other people bring their gifts to the world. That's it. And then how do I do that?
Well, it's funny, we're in completely different ways. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do teach, right? So knowing that and accepting that role was big. Going back to accepting that role. I just do it differently. So yeah. Awesome. Virginia, I so appreciate you being on this podcast. This was a much longer podcast than usual, but I love it.
Sorry, Camille.
No, I love it.
Talk about as always.
It's supposed to be natural. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about, is just talking and being natural and that. So if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Oh, just reach out by email. They had you can just reach out to Virginia H. Rich 22 at Gmail.
Okay. We can do that. You can also find you on LinkedIn.
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And if you can't find her, well, we know that you will be at the County College of Morris.
College of Morris.
Okay. Yeah. And that's in New Jersey for all of our listeners.
It surely is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Virginia, for being my co-author in the book and for being on this podcast today.
Camille, it has been such a pleasure, the whole process. So thank you for all you do.
You are welcome. Thank you for joining me today, everyone, all of our listeners. If you loved this interview, please share it with your friends and pick up our book, The Ultimate Guide to Leaving Your Legacy. It came out in September 2024. You can also check out others by going to soulprofessional.com. As a reminder, a soul professional lives in a higher vibration, has an alternative approach to business, and is here to help repair the world. So if that's you, come join us over at soulprofessional.com. Good night, everybody. Thank you.